Welcome everyone. Tonight we are chairless, so Ray was not able to make it, and unfortunately Antonio has decided he needs to resign from the board. So I was hoping Antonio would come and say goodbye and let us thank him at least, but I don't know if he's going to be able to make it. So according to your bylaws, we need to have somebody else from the board be the temporary chair or the chair for at least this meeting. It was mentioned earlier that Jonathan is also part of the leadership team, but Jonathan, you do the minutes, so I don't know if you would want to chair the meeting and then have somebody else do the minutes. What would your comfort level be with that?
Yeah, so I'd have to admit I'm a little light on preparation for this month's meeting, but leaving me believing I might be a little underprepared for the reports from advisory board committees section. That said, happy to give it a shot, and hopefully others can help me fill in the blanks here.
Great. Okay. So Jonathan, take it away.
Kick it off with roll call then, I imagine, or do we need to, I guess, commence the meeting officially in some fashion?
Yes.
All right. Well then, we're kicking off today's May 9th edition of the DOTI Advisory Board meeting. I will be starting off with roll call to ensure we have quorum. That would require 11 persons in today's meeting. We have had a few absence notices coming in, which means at maximum we will see 13 here. So skating it pretty close. I don't think we'll be able to conduct any official decision making if we don't hit quorum, although I'd have to perhaps ask other process officials in the room if we are even allowed to continue the meeting at all if we don't have quorum. I think it's just that we lose decision making capacity here. In any case, we'll start off with roll call here, starting off with Lucia Brown.
Here.
Here, all right. Alicia Brown.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
Great. Brian Carroll.
Hello, I'm here.
Jake Cohen.
Here.
Alan Cogill.
Here, present.
Michael Garcia. Sounds like a no. Paul Gonzer.
Present.
Christopher Johnson.
Here.
Joe Levi.
Here.
Jamie Lewis.
Here.
Kurt Morrison.
Here.
Julie Reiskin.
Here.
Manuel Zubia.
Here.
Okay, perfect. Those that I have not named, that being Ray Gutierrez, Aileen McCallum, Chris Pacheco, and Tandra Wright, all notified in advance that they would not be in attendance today. With that, we do have 13 members in the room and thus do have quorum to proceed. Before I move us over to public comment, wondering, Michelle, just to make sure I didn't miss anything from an introduction, were there any other, we need to approve meeting minutes. Is there anything else prior to public comment that you're aware of we need to address?
The only thing we might want to address, and we could always do this at the end, is the board members that are their time is up and have decided not to continue. And then I mentioned Antonio earlier, but we can do that at the end too.
Okay. Yeah, let's find time for that at the end of the meeting then. So then quickly need to approve last month's minutes. Michelle did share this with all of us in advance, a document containing the codification of the minutes that Alan took for us last month while I was absent. Thank you, Alan. Looking to approve the meeting minutes. Can I get a second on that?
Second here.
All right. Looking for approvals then. Could I get ayes or hands raised?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And nays.
This is Julie. I'd like to abstain since I was only present for a part of the meeting.
Okay, totally fair. With that, one abstention and no nays, meeting minutes from April 11th of last month are approved. Michelle, thank you for documenting those. And with that, I believe we can move over to public comment. Who do we have up first?
Our first is Paul. Paul, I'm going to move you over into the meeting. Let us know when you join us, Paul.
Jonathan, would you like me to take notes on your behalf if you're facilitating?
Sure. Why don't I share the document with you briefly?
I think Paul is with us. Paul,
All
you might
right.
want to unmute.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I have posted a link in the Zoom chat. I put together just a simple website for revisiting the topic from last month about 18th Avenue in City Park West. And as an update, in April alone, there were 3 accidents on the 0.7 mile segment of 18th Avenue in City Park West. That's pretty ridiculous and above the average of the previous year of 2 per month. And it's a real concern for me as a resident, not feeling safe in being able to cross 18th Avenue from where I live on the southern side of 18th Avenue and crossing over to the north to get to cafes there or the Uptown Health District. And I also do not feel safe at all riding a bicycle on that street since there is no bike lane. And cars regularly go quite quickly down that street, well above the 30 miles an hour. And so last month, I asked the board to consider using the opportunity in 2022 where 18th Avenue is scheduled for full resurfacing and repainting of the traffic lines to, instead of repainting them as they currently are, repaint them for a safer street that will benefit everyone. So it would take one traffic lane and turn it into a bike lane. So no change in parking. The parking lane would remain on the same side of the street. So no changes to parking signs, no changes to the street sweeping schedule necessary. It would just be replacing one of the traffic lanes with a bike lane and then a buffer with plastic bollards similar to 31st Avenue, which was recently redone in a similar style. And I don't know when 18th Avenue is scheduled for resurfacing in 2022. I don't think I've seen it come up in the updated list that DOTI publishes. But I wanted to follow up with the board here to discuss what are the next steps. I think we have a really good opportunity here to essentially make a positive change with no real cost difference between what will currently happen this year. And I think it'll benefit everyone in City Park West, as well as students that use the street to walk to and from Denver East High School and the DC 21 school on 17th Avenue. I think 17th Avenue has the same problem, but it's not scheduled for resurfacing this year. So that's why I am focusing on 18th Avenue. But I would want to advocate for similar changes on 17th Avenue when that gets scheduled for resurfacing.
Paul, I think your 3 minutes are up.
Got it. So the final thing that I wanted to say is just what are the next concrete things to do to make sure this gets done and we don't lose this opportunity to make the change without really any additional budget spend on the city side. I don't know if that's something you guys can answer now or not, but I would really appreciate your feedback. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. I think we'll look, we'll need to discuss this as a board as offhand. I'm not sure which of our subcommittees this might immediately be directed to for follow-up. I do think this is the kind of question that we, or perhaps someone from the department on the line, could answer in short order. I do know that some of these repaving projects are simple repavings that only repave existing signatures on the road, whereas others take that repaving opportunity to upgrade, upgrade or in some way modify the striping and other paint enhancements on the road. I myself am not sure how we determine where that staff time goes. I shouldn't say we, but I should say the department itself determines where that staff time goes and when that staff time is dedicated to these types of projects. So perhaps something we can bring up in our executive update a little bit later this meeting. If we don't have answers on the line here today, would happily parcel this out to one of our subcommittee teams to get to follow up on an answer. Thank you again, Paul.
Okay, our next speaker is Jose. Jose, I'm going to promote you to panelist. Let us know when you've joined.
Hello, everyone. I think I'm connected.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is JoCastro. I am on the Mayor's Bike Advisory Committee. I believe this issue is coming up. It's part of your agenda, but the timing worked out best for me to just address it here briefly. So I just wanted to essentially give you a background about the letter that you will be discussing later. We, a committee in the Bike Advisory Committee, met with Denver Streets Partnership and just learned about the I-25 Central project that is coming down the pipeline. And we learned that there are some important decisions to be made coming up. So we wanted to send a letter to the mayor. You know, it's a big project that affects bicycles, but then we were thinking about it, and really it's a multimodal project. It's much larger than just bicycles. So we had the idea to send a joint letter. So we reached out to the Pedestrian Advisory Committee as well as your committee. We were hoping to get your support for the letter. I assume a draft has been sent around that you will discuss in more detail later. And, you know, I'm happy to discuss any of the decision making that went into it. We did have some input from people on your board as well. But overall, we wanted to keep it narrow and focused. We would like the city and related organizations to take a position against highway widening. We don't view any widening of the I-25 highway as being compatible with the city's you know, transportation goals in the future. So we just wanted to send a letter in that regard, essentially. So it is a very simple letter, short and sweet. We really didn't want to overburden it with facts. There will be a lot of decisions to be made about the actual design of the project down the road, but we wanted to just keep it simple, you know, at this stage. So as I mentioned, I won't be able to stick around for the entire meeting. If there are any questions now, I'm happy to answer them. If there are any questions as part of your discussion, you know, I'm happy to answer them via email or have a phone conversation. But yeah, we did want to reach out because the timing, we would like to get the letter out this month, probably in the next week or two. I believe the MPAC board meeting is coming up later this week, if not early next week. And our own meeting is also we already approved it conditionally. We just had our meeting last week. So yeah, again, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Jose. I'm going to
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Jose. Well, I know that there's not time now, but I do have a couple of questions for Jose after the call or another time.
I do know that Jose, I don't think you're gonna be able to stay for the rest of the meeting, right, Jose?
Just froze up.
I am not. I could potentially hop back on if there would be, a time where that conversation might happen, just to be able to have the conversation today.
We were seeking to have that conversation between 4:45 and 5:45. We could move that part of the discussion to a time that's appropriate for you, if there's anywhere in that window that would work for you.
I mean, I could hop back on around 5 if that would work.
5, okay. We'll just make that the second order of business during our reports from advisory board committees.
Okay,
Thank
and
you,
I
sir.
will hop back on shortly before that.
It's actually at 5:30. My timeline on the left, Jonathan, was wrong. So it's 5:30, Jose. So if you
Oh.
could come on at about 5:20, I don't want you to have to wait around. And then right when Denver moves everyone, we'll have you be the first step.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Our next speaker is Anna. Anna, I'm going to promote you to panelist. Will you please let us know when you join?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hello, board members. My name is Anna Cornelius. I live in the Cap Hill neighborhood. I'm also the Executive Director of Social Change and Advocacy for Denver Homeless Out Loud, and I sit on the STAR Advisory Board representing District 10. I'd like to make a comment about the fencing and rocks, boulders in the public right-of-way. I've been listening to the board meetings over the last several months on this topic. And outside of the problematic response that has been documented through 311, I have evidence that DOTI is complicit with this activity. On April 26th, I attended the sweep at 31st and Lawrence. The property owner at 3100 Lawrence had placed rocks in the public right-of-way adjacent to his property. The encampment had taken some of the large rocks to hold tarps down. And the property owner was talking to Denver Police Department, who were commending him for placing rocks in the public right-of-way. DPD and DOTI allowed this man to enter, and Denver Fire Department assisted him in taking rocks from the encampment and placing them back in the public right-of-way adjacent to his property, while DPD made supporting statements like, "He works so hard." I took a 12-minute video showing this, and at the end, the property owner exits the fencing and asks me if I made sure to get his good side. This all happened in front of Evan Dreyer, Deputy Chief of Staff for the Mayor's Office. All of the above mentioned city departments were complicit in carrying out the public right-of-way violations that this board has been discussing with no apparent solution for the last several months. I have observed these agencies facilitate public right-of-way encumbrances via orange fencing and rocks and boulders, also at Marion and Park and at 22nd and Stout. More enforcement is not the answer. This is about a city having codified their hatred for a particular demographic. Those who have the least in our society are unhoused. This is about a city in which privilege rises to the top. In the 1940s in Germany, they codified their hatred for a particular demographic also. This issue is more insidious than this board realizes. We do not need more enforcement. Finding residents who are already displeased with the city's care of our unhoused only adds insult to injury and is not going to solve this issue. It's going to create more distress. It will create more bureaucracy for your already diminished capacity. I ask that you have some courage to lead. I ask that DOTI lead the conversation on why DOTI is complicit with this behavior. How can DOTI's policies and procedures reflect inclusivity for all residents of Denver? How can DOTI use existing infrastructure like the city's communications department to educate residents on public right-of-way uses and abuses? How can DOTI provide educational materials on public right-of-way uses and abuses to residential and commercial property owners, property managers, and neighborhood groups? I urge this advisory body to seek solutions to problems, not quick fixes. There are many issues in Denver. I encourage you to be creative, align with your heart, and work to build a world we all want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Michelle, do we have additional speakers or is Anna our final speaker?
We have one more,
One more.
and his name is James Warren. James, I'm going to promote you to panelist. Please let us know when you join.
Okie dokie. Can you see me? Yes. Okay. I'm getting some thumbs up. Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for your time today. My name is James Warren. I live in West Colfax, and I don't have a car, so I walk or bike or bus everywhere I need to go. And I'm just a guy. I don't represent anyone. I'm just here. So I'll be quick. I'm here to advocate for DOTI and our city ultimately to take responsibility for the sidewalks in our city. When I walk out my door from my apartment to the street in front of my apartment, I'm met by a sidewalk that's not ADA compliant. I went out and measured, and it's about 4 inches shy of ADA specifications. This isn't isolated to my street. You can walk on a patchwork of narrow and missing sidewalks all throughout my neighborhood. I'm lucky enough that I can walk around issues like this. I can walk on narrow sidewalks or make do when there's no sidewalk at all. But that's not true for everybody in my neighborhood. Just the other day, I witnessed a man in an electric wheelchair cruising down the middle of 13th Street where no sidewalks exist at all. Other times I've seen people pushing strollers in the street or simply opting to walk in the street or in the road because there's no space. Fundamentally, this is neither safe nor dignified, and we need both of those things in order to get people walking. So I understand that at present, it's the homeowner's responsibility to build and maintain sidewalks. That's clearly not working. I also understand that this is city council and ultimately the people of Denver's decision to shift that responsibility from homeowners to DOTI. But I believe DOTI has a role here. I am advocating here today that you throw your organizational weight behind maintaining these sidewalks. The Denver Deserves Sidewalks campaign is how I found out about this in the first place. So it doesn't have to be by name, but that could work too. But I'm just advocating that you make it known that as an organization, you would support this shift of responsibility were it to happen. So anyway, thanks for your time. I really appreciate all that y'all do. And thanks for just, representing the people and fulfilling this really important role. So thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Okay, that's it, Jonathan.
Okay. With that, then we'll conclude public comment and move on to our report from DOTI leadership. I did see that both Earl and Nick were on the line today. Will that be both of you or one of you taking that?
It will. I'm hoping that is Margaret Medellin on the call. We're going to have our deputy manager who oversees our solid waste and wastewater on here introduce herself and kind of tell you a little bit about what they're working on today. Margaret, are you on?
I am on the call.
There she is. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join you this evening. My name is Margaret Medellin, and I'm one of the deputy managers here at DOTI. As Nick said, I oversee the solid waste, wastewater, and green infrastructure divisions. So happy to be with you all, and did want to give you a quick update on our volume-based trash pricing proposal. We did come and talk with you all probably about 2 months ago to give you an update on the project and the proposal. So just wanted to check in with you all, let you know where we are now. We have attended LUTI and provided an informational briefing to the committee. We are scheduled to go again tomorrow. We're going back on June 7th to LUTI, hopefully with an action item. And then we are right now targeting June 20th as a first reading at City Council, and then followed on June 27th, we'll go back for a final reading and hopefully a positive outcome with Council. And would like to invite anyone from this board to join us if you would like, and let your thoughts and opinions be known. I know a lot of you are representing different council members. And so just wanting to make sure that they hear from you and your thoughts on this proposal. I have a few slides I can run through just really quickly to just refresh some of our ideas and then also share with you how some of these have changed a bit. So I think, can you, Michelle, give me the ability to share my screen?
Yes, I just did.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm giving you all, if you can see that, and just a preview of what we're going to take tomorrow. And you've seen some of these slides. I'm just going to jump around a little bit to give you the highlight tour. You know, the bottom line is these are the fees that we're proposing. And again, we're talking about aligning our fees and our values. You know, right now, people who compost are paying about $9.75 a month to compost. And that's about 30,000 of our 180,000 households that participate in our solid waste services. So we're really hoping by bringing a fee, we're going to incentivize behavior that supports a more sustainable community. So if someone is going to choose the smallest trash bin, that would be $9 a month. So that is actually less than our compost customers currently pay for compost. And again, the beauty of this program is everyone in the city will get compost and weekly recycling at no additional fee. So we're really tying the fee to trash rather than compost. Let's see, some other items I wanted to talk about. You know, one thing that we are, let me see, we've got a newsletter that's going to be going out, really talking about educating people. And we're really wanting to focus on the educational piece. An ordinance like this will have the ability at the back end, if people are just non-compliant, we will have the ability to have fees, but we really, or I'm sorry, penalties on top of the fees, but we really want to focus on education. So we've got a team lined up, ready to go if this does actually pass, to really teach our community how to recycle, how to compost, how to really move items from the black bin to the purple and the green bins. And we've got a lot of community partners out there, and we're really going to be leaning on these community partners to help us get out and educate, go to meetings. Right now, so far, we have met with over 1,000 individuals with just committee meetings that we've had leading up to this point. And we really want to, you know, if this passes, we're really going to lean in and focus on getting out there and meeting with the community. Again, we're talking about weekly recycling, which we're really excited about, and we're really seeing that as a way that, you know, we're hearing that there are a lot of community members who feel that they would be recycling a lot more if we provided recycling on a weekly basis. So that is really something we've heard a lot of excitement from people in the community. And then we're talking about compost for the whole city. And again, this is going to be a rollout if we do get the approval for this ordinance. We'll then talk about having a rollout that's really going to run into next year, because that is going to involve more trucks and more drivers. And it's also going to involve a lot of heavy education. We don't want to just put compost carts around the city before people really know how to use the compost carts. So we're really leaning on a rollout that's going to have a really heavy educational piece at the beginning. One thing that we're talking about right now is having a temporary inconvenience credit. And that's really going to be, you know, we know that we can't overnight get compost to everyone in the city. We're going to have to roll this out across the city. And it's going to probably take a few months to get it out so that everyone has that service. And so what we're talking about right now is providing this credit until you do have kind of the full suite of services: compost, recycle, and trash. So with that, another program that we just are going to talk about, this is something that Director Mejia in solid waste currently provides, but we just want to make sure people know about this. We're thinking a lot about cart management, and as we're talking about having even more carts in the city, really how do we solution with our neighborhoods and talk about, maybe there's something where a neighborhood wants to share compost carts in an alley, or maybe there's a place, location that makes sense for that alley. Another thing that we're offering is if someone has a difficult time managing those carts, maybe it's someone who's mobility challenged, maybe it's an elderly, maybe it's someone that's, broke their leg and it's not a long-term thing. They just need some assistance for a period of time getting their cart to wherever the pickup location is and then back onto their property. The drivers do provide that assistance right now. Or we'll go out and actually talk to our customer and see if there's maybe another solution that makes sense for them. So with that, those are really the highlights of this program, but I did want to open it up for questions, see if there's anything I can provide more detail on, or maybe see what your thoughts are as we're rounding the corner and finalizing this ordinance to hopefully get a positive vote. So I guess I'll hand it back over to you, Nick. I can't see questions right now.
I think Michelle spelled out our LUTI, Land Use, Transportation, Infrastructure. So it's a subcommittee of the City Council.
Sorry, I broke our rule.
And then I see a question from Brian. Will anything change for commercial and large residential? And then I see a couple hands up that we can get to after this one.
Okay, sure. So under our charter, the city is just chartered with providing service to single family homes and small residential. So we do not have the charter ability to provide that service to commercial and large residential. And part of that is really not wanting to compete with private business. So the way the charter is currently set up, we do not have the ability to service the commercial and large residential. But what we are hoping is through stepping up and managing our solid waste better, that we will then be able to have some more of an ability to have ordinances that are going to make requirements on that sector. So right now, we don't service that community, but we are looking at, and I know working with CASA on what are some ways that we can really help that community as well, increase diversion rates. I will share with this group that commercial actually has a better diversion rate than our residential sector does. So we have some catching up to do with them. So hopefully that I answered that.
I think so. And I saw two hands go up, but I don't know what order. Why don't we do Julie, and then Paul has a question regarding illegal dumping.
Thanks. So I noticed, I have no sense of time, but I think it was a week or two ago, there was an article in the Post about this, either the Post or it was one of the papers, the Post or the Sun. And I actually, when I read the article, I was thinking, I really like the way you guys explained it better. But I was wondering if you've gotten any feedback from the article, or, if that resonated with anyone, or, or maybe you didn't hear from the five of us that still read newspapers, but I was just wondering if that resonated at all.
And Julie, can you give the high points on the Post article? I know we've had a few.
Oh, it just said that Denver and I guess other cities, and I think it might have even been around the country, if I'm remembering correctly, we're going to start like change how they do trash service. And we're talking about this program with the composting and I mean, with, making it so that you pay one fee for all of the services instead of this kind of patchwork that we have now, and that the goal was to reduce the use of trash. And part of why it resonated, I even really read the article was because I'd heard this presentation in April. I don't know that I would have even bothered to read it had that not been the case. And again, I can't swear if it was the Sun or the Post, but it was one of those two. So I guess,
yeah, we have had a little bit of media coverage. Not really a whole lot, but for the most part, they've been following our talking points. So I'm not sure about the article that you're referencing, but we can go back and look at that. But yeah, we try to get our talking points out there so that the media will pick up how we're presenting it, but that doesn't always happen. And I anticipate, there's some concern about the timing of this. And so that, we do hear some viewpoints that are saying maybe the timing's not right. So that could have been that article, but we can go back and take a look. For the most part, though, I think we've seen the media's picked up our talking points.
All right, Paul.
Margaret, thank you so much. I apologize because I'm about to play devil's advocate. I appreciate you being in this meeting and speaking about what the city's hoping to roll out. But I'm wondering about, a lot of the talk we've had for the last 3 or 4 months with right-of-way issues and boulders and right-of-way and fencing going up and all doesn't really boil down to an issue of like, why is it happening or who's doing it, but more whose job is it to enforce it when it's not kosher. And so my concern with this, I was living in Congress Park probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when the city started eliminating dumpsters and going to the can method of pickup. And I remember from then the issues in multiple neighborhoods, the West End, the Colfax corridor, pretty much all the parts of Denver that have alley service, people dumping, sofas, bookshelves, things like that. And not residents, but probably people just dumping stuff out of the back of pickup trucks coming through the neighborhood. Is there, as we roll to this method, has anyone given thought of, and is there been discussion of who the teeth are in the enforcement end of that, so that we don't repeat those circumstances 12 years ago and end up with a lot of alleyways with smaller trash cans, but also piling up with tires and old furniture and mattresses and things like that. I love the idea of leading with the carrot, but someone also has to follow with the stick. So I'm wondering who's the stick in this analogy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Paul. I think that is, you kind of nailed a concern. If people are being charged to use the black cart, and the black cart fills up, what do they do? What do they do then? And so a big part of this is leading with education, but the ordinance will have the ability for fines, and it's actually going to be mirrored after our sewer, our sanitary and storm fees that we have currently, and that do have a lien on them. So there is the ability ultimately to lien for non-payment and non-compliance. So I think, and really the lien is more for non-payment, but for the compliance issues, what we do now, if someone has a recycle cart or a compost cart that they aren't using properly, we'll tag it. We'll talk to the customer, try to educate them. If they continue, we pull the cart. We can't have that type of non-compliance result in the contamination. But we are really going to lean on that educational piece. And as far as, if this is going to result in, people just starting to leave trash in their alley, that is illegal dumping. And that's something that we currently, have teams and inspectors that go through the city. And, so that isn't something that's legal.
Yeah.
And I think part of our strategy for dealing with that is going to be, education first, and then having inspectors, having eyes on it by moving, and thank you to everyone for the support on the all city reroute. That really gave us the ability to be efficient now in how we look at the city. And our solid waste team is now broken up into districts, and we have one supervisor over an entire district, which is really giving us the ability to focus on neighborhoods. So, and we know when actually, we had more illegal dumping when we had the dumpsters, because, people from all over would just drive through and fill those dumpsters up. And
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt here, but I'm less concerned about the non-compliance of people who are going to go out and order a different trash can and pay for a trash can. My concern is the pickup truck that rolls through Barnum and ditches 4 tires out the back of that pickup truck next to trash cans, or the van that parks in Cap Hill and all of a sudden the neighbors wake up to, decomposing sofa next to their trash cans. And the difference between now and, 10 or 12 years ago, when we rolled over from dumpsters to cans, is everyone and their mom has a Ring camera on their front porch and a motion activated camera in their alley. And so I don't need an answer right now. I don't know what the answer is. I'm asking if you know it, or if there's been thought given to it. Will there be an easy process for someone to reach out to PocketGov or call 311 and say, hey, my Ring camera picked up a red Chevrolet pickup, license plate DET 024, dropping 4 tires out of the back next to my trash bins? That's kind of what I'm wondering about.
yeah, and I think that's perfect. And, right now we want people to call 311 if there's illegal dumping like that going on. And I think that's going to have to be part of the outreach that we have, for people to know, yes, that's a good reason to call 311. And not only can we get inspectors out there, but if you have video on that, that is certainly something that we, we take seriously as a city. We do not need people coming in and illegally dumping in our alleys. So yes, 311's the way to report that. And I think I'll make note of that we do need to include that in our outreach.
I'll need to interject now and draw this topic to conclusion. We are unfortunately well behind on our agenda topics. I need to transition to Denver Moves Everyone. Thank you, Margaret, for the presentation here. If you could send in the chat before you go that date by which this is going to be before council, I think I missed that along the way. Beyond that, I would welcome the Denver Moves team to begin discussion, but would ask, I know that you previously had a much larger chunk of the agenda, but given our time and updates required from our advisory board committees, I'd ask if you could please endeavor to conclude by 5:20 p.m. I know that is a significant shavings off your previously allotted time, but that would allow us to review and react to some of the letters proposed by various organizations here, as well as a brief rundown of our committee updates and some of the odds and ends we'll need to discuss, which will include election of a new co-chair given Antonio's recent resignation. So I want to make sure we have time for that. Looks like Evan is starting to share a screen. So I believe, Evan, it would be you presenting to us next. Is that right?
Yeah, and Jonathan,
Yes.
I'll kick this off.
Jen,
I'm
hey.
Jennifer Hillhouse. I'm the Director of Transportation Mobility Planning for DOTI. So thanks for having us here tonight. And absolutely, we can, I'm thinking, Sam and Evan, that maybe we run through our state of the system pretty quickly. That is posted on our website. So that might be a way that we can make up some time here. But just really wanted to thank you first for allowing us to come to your meeting. This is a really important effort. I think this is the second time this team has seen a presentation on Denver Moves Everyone, which is our strategic transportation plan for the department. And really, we want to focus. We had some background on where we are, where we've been, and state of the system. but really focusing a discussion around how we prioritize our mobility investment improvements that align with our vision and our goals. That's what we focused with you at our last meeting. And all of this has been developed right alongside our community. So we're excited to share what we have tonight and really hear from you on what we need to be thinking and considering as we move through this process. So with that, Evan and Sam, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen, for kicking us off. And Jonathan, totally hear you. We'll endeavor to have a shorter presentation. So we may be making some adjustments on the fly. So hope you can all bear with us as we kind of meet that need. But as Jen noted, we want to provide an update where we are in the process right now. We did have kind of a fun exercise just to get you thinking about the state of the system, which is a critical document. It's been 10 years or more since Public Works at the time, and now DOTI has done a strategic plan. So we've collected a whole host of data that establish a strong baseline for our transportation and mobility system today. And we just wanted to generate excitement through an exercise. So we'll think if we might have to skip that just to stay on the timestamp, but that'll be the second component. Then going into investment priorities and trade-offs, and that'll really be the focus of the discussion this evening. So we've got some preliminary results. We want the advisory committee to weigh in, kind of, how would you be thinking about the information and the data that we're gathering as we seek to move into next steps? Really the focus here is that fiscally constrained investment program that we developed through Denver Moves Everyone. And so really critical to learn and listen from your ideas this evening. So with that, I'll move over to where are we now? So Denver Moves Everyone is divided into 4 phases. We're moving into the second year of the project. So we have co-created with thousands of Denverites the vision and the goals for the plan, which are now our transportation goals for Denver and our vision for where we want to be in 2050. We've also worked through what we called scenario planning, which is a process by which we forecast what could change by the year 2050, and we gain insights from community about what they like and they don't like. We've coupled that with new tools at our disposal that help us to model what the future impacts could be, and we've combined that information to demonstrate what are the paths that we need to invest in to reach the goals and the vision of this plan and of our city, given an uncertain future. And now we're moving to the phase of the project where the rubber really hits the road. So we have our aspirational vision, our goals, the scenarios that tell a story about what could happen. And how do we walk that back to a program of projects, investments, programs, and services that we can prioritize to reach those goals and that vision in a very stepwise fashion. And as we move through this phase of the project and into the fall and winter later this year, we'll be focused on wrapping up the plan and then developing new tools that help us to track the success of implementing the plan's recommendations. Our outreach to date has been successful. We've engaged more people in this project than we have on any prior DOTI project. Every neighborhood, thousands of people, lots of new people. So, bringing new voices to the table, and we'll describe some tactics that we've used to gain those new voices. Boots on the ground, as well as online tools. So a whole host of tactics have been leveraged, even in the midst of the pandemic. No shortage of challenges to overcome, but we're proud that we have been able to gain thousands of individuals dedicating their time to the future of transportation, just like this committee does, emphasizing how important it is that we plan for our future, for a better future. Really quickly, the vision and the goals have been co-crafted by Denverites. And so I won't read the vision statement, but you can see that there. That is an aspirational statement of what we hope Denver is. And we use feedback about, in one word, what is your vision for the future of transportation in Denver, to craft this and really elevate the voices of people who have been less involved in long-term plans in the past, to make sure that their feedback is integrated into the statement. We have 5 goals. Think about these as principles that we will orient our work around, our priorities around, and those are mobility, safety, sustainability, community, and quality. The state of the system has definitions of each of these goals. And then equity is that consistent theme that's threaded into each goal. We didn't want to silo transportation equity as a goal topic. We want to be thinking about how do we integrate equity into everything that we do to eliminate transportation inequities that exist today and have persisted for too long as we look to make a transportation system that's inclusive for everyone. And all of the feedback that we gained really reinforces what we're calling the Denver Moves Everyone Performance Framework. And so this comprises of vision, outcomes. Those are those long-term targets that we can track to success towards, the goals that I just discussed. And then we'll be developing and crafting objectives and metrics, and think about objectives supporting the accomplishment of goals and metrics being even shorter in duration, helping us to track progress on those larger objectives. So we're taking a very stepwise, data-driven approach to making sure that we can make progress on the aspirational vision and goals we established through this plan and eventually achieve the outcomes. So State of the System report, again, this is a groundbreaking document that demonstrates the significant change that Denver has experienced over the last decade and underscores the importance of why we need a plan now and the trends moving in the right directions, the wrong directions, so that we can organize our thinking to create a better transportation system tomorrow. The State of the System is divided into 3 key sections. The first is the DME overview. We tried to make this an easy to read document that demonstrates the core functions of DOTI as an organization. Sometimes it's kind of complicated what DOTI does. As an advisory committee, I think this will be a great resource as you describe the function and the core work that we do, the assets that we manage, in the breadth of our responsibilities. We also publish our vision and goals for the plan and document how those were co-created by community. The second section of the report is the evolution of transportation in Denver. We go all the way back to even before Denver was settled in the 1860s to demonstrate that transportation was critical for trade of Native American tribes that called this area home, and that the Cherry Creek and the Platte River Trail continued to be the nexus of transportation as we moved into railroads. And fast forward to Denver's phases of development, being a people-oriented city at its inception, transitioning to a city built around the vehicle. And as we move into our modern phase of city planning and transportation development, how we're thinking differently about creating more space for people and creating more balance across the transportation system. And then section 3 dives into the weeds. We use new tools and data to demonstrate stories in the state of transportation around each of our 5 goal principles. So we have a chapter on each of the goals: mobility, safety, sustainability, community, and quality, where those goals are defined, and then we use a host of data to demonstrate the state of that thing today. And what this demonstrates is that there are both opportunities and a host of challenges to reach the goals that we establish through this plan. And so you can kind of see a snapshot of those different data points that we have been able to demonstrate through the research and analysis conducted. So I won't go through all of these, but you can kind of start to see that picture that we do have a lot of work to do, but it's important to establish a baseline so that we can measure and track success against. To date, again, we hadn't done a strategic plan in 12 years. And while we have done planning on different parts of the street, this is our cohesive citywide plan that enables us to plan a system approach to transportation in Denver. And so we are going, yes, Jen, thank you for dropping that link. We were going to go through kind of interesting highlights from each section of the state of the system, but Jonathan, per your note, gonna skip that. But the point of that was to demonstrate transportation affects everyone in Denver. I think you all know that. And this report is really important to help us understand and think about the future of transportation. So please do visit the link that was dropped in the chat. We worked really hard to make sure that this is an accessible document using lots of maps and graphics to tell the story. We're using new data that transportation agencies didn't have access to 5 years ago to understand trip patterns and travel flow. So the point, we have really good data to help our thinking as we look to the future. And we hope you do take a look and benefit from this report and let me know if you've got any questions. I'd be happy to field them after the meeting. All right, so we got about 20 minutes. Let's kind of, Evan, maybe we just fast track the baseline, get to the discussion. So next slide.
Sam.
Yeah, feel free to jump in. Yeah, I just think hit the highlights and we'll save time for some Q&A.
All right, thank you, Jen and Sam, and thank you all. Again, as Sam kind of mentioned, the state system was really the outcome of the first phase. Our outcome of the next phase of our work is really going to be how do we develop a performance-based plan? And that really does include a financial element. So we're developing a process that really links everything that DOTI is doing in a performance-based planning process so that we can evaluate where we want to be, our long-term outcomes. We can really kind of think about what are the financial unconstrained needs that we need to really be able to accomplish those outcomes. And then going through a process to really kind of prioritize our projects to understand what's the best investment, best value investment we can make that'll help us achieve those goals in the end. And that's all really leading up to one of the key DME products coming up in the next year, which is really a 6-year fiscally constrained plan that, as Sam noted, will include all of our priority investments from projects and services and programs and initiatives to operations. So we've kind of laid out a very technical process. We're well in the means of this, but we're also looking to really engage the public at key points throughout. So again, we're kind of rooting our system-wide outcomes and the DME vision and goals and all the input we heard from there. We're in the process now of really going through a public engagement period to really understand what do people value within their neighborhoods? What are their preferences for the types of projects that they would like to see built? We're also asking them some questions about how do we make those tough financial decisions to balance our investments across our broad programs and figure out how we can accomplish all of our goals or advance all of our goals within our limited constrained budget. And we'll be going forwards in the fall of this year as we kind of wrapped up our initial recommendations for that capital program and kind of validating and vetting some of the recommendations that come out of this. So right now, we really want to kind of focus on the phase that we're in now, which we're kind of calling our spring outreach on priorities and trade-offs. And really, we're going through a lot of great work online and in person, and it's really to kind of help twofold, kind of help understand from the public, what do they matter? What matters in their neighborhoods? What would they prioritize? What do they value the most? Second, how do they kind of make those tough budget decisions? How do you make decisions between what you're going to invest in? What are the trade-offs involved in that? What are you willing to give up in order to get a little bit more in some other area? And that's the kind of information that we're going to show to you today and then have kind of an open discussion around. Primarily doing this outreach online and coupled with very active grassroots activity. We've got great support from our community-based outreach partners initiative. This is a very culturally inclusive, bringing the message to people, using communication styles and ambassadors in the community so that we can really reach everybody across the city. We're targeting our grassroots events in those areas of the city that we don't typically hear from and that typically aren't engaged in planning processes. And we're continuing to coordinate closely with the Office of Community and Business Engagement and really leveraging our public partners to make our grassroots outreach really meaningful and really exciting in this phase. If you haven't already had a chance to visit denvermoveseveryone.com, please do check it out. There's a great online tool there, and you'll learn a little bit more about what we're going to showcase here tonight. So on that, if you were to click on that link, don't do it now at the meeting, but do it afterwards. You'll learn a little bit about how transportation is funded in Denver, where DOTI currently invests, and you'll be asked to kind of go through 2 primary questions. One is kind of thinking about trade-offs in your neighborhood and what types of improvements that you would like to see. And you're able to kind of click around and understand what you might get and what you might be willing to give up for a different project. The second main component or question of this phase of outreach is really about those kind of trade-offs. How do you make significant budget decisions in a constrained environment? And again, asking the public where they would really invest those limited resources. So we're going to kind of highlight both of these main questions and some of the early results we're seeing so far. First, maybe just a little bit of teaser to encourage you to visit that link and check it out and share it with your friends and families and networks. But generally speaking, Denverites, and this includes homeowners and rentals and commercial business properties, really contribute about $16 a month for everything that the DOTI does and all the transportation services that the DOTI provides. Really how that's broken up right now when we kind of think about where we're spending and where we're investing, where that really comes from is primarily property taxes. There's not a dedicated revenue source for transportation at the city and for DOTI. This is similar to many other cities across the country, but the others do utilize a variety of different revenues to fund transportation specific. When we look about where we spend those money and where those revenues go, about 25% of DOTI's annual budget on average over the last 5 years has really been dedicated to what we're calling kind of expanding and improving the system. The rest is really kind of split equally between everything we do to maintain the system, the plowing and sweeping and general operations to replace infrastructure that's needed, as well as everything we do to operate the system, both the staff and the people who are supporting meetings like this, as well as all the kind of infrastructure that works to help manage the entire transportation system. That's kind of really a snapshot of where the monies go on a general basis today. So I want to kind of step back, highlight that first question that we asked the broader public. They were kind of presented a variety of options. We asked them to consider whether they would really like to focus in their neighborhood on projects and project types that might really expand Denver's infrastructure, new things everywhere, or whether they might really kind of prioritize and consider things that would really improve infrastructure in their neighborhood. Maybe we're making a few more targeted investments to get higher quality but less quantity investments overall. And they were kind of allowed to evaluate each of these options and really kind of click only one. So whether you really would like to see more things of everywhere or really more quality things maybe in fewer places. And this again sets up a really interesting trade-off discussion with the public to help both educate that we can't necessarily provide everything everywhere as much as we'd like to, but also provides really valuable information to DOTI so that we can take this and intake it and use this to drive some of our future prioritization processes, some of our future planning efforts across the city. So there's kind of a lot going on here, but we'd like to just kind of highlight what we're hearing so far. We've got kind of plus or minus 1,000 results in, and we're really only in the first month of this outreach phase. So we've got a lot of great outreach activities to come, a lot of great grassroots events. We'll be hearing more and more from more diverse communities and voices to add to this. So what we're showing now is very much draft results. It's just kind of a sneak peek from what we've been hearing so far. And this is what we're hearing. We kind of take a look down this list when we think about asking people what they value in their neighborhood in terms of sidewalks, which we heard from public presenters today. Looks like there was a little bit of a trend towards improving the system. That was really kind of framed up as, let's make those really significant investments on our busiest streets that really improve the pedestrian environment. And the trade-off, of course, being we can't complete the gaps maybe in every single neighborhood. When we kind of thought about bikeways, maybe the trend was a little bit more towards the other direction. It looked like the initial results suggested maybe we ought to really focus on completing the network across the city, even if that means maybe a little bit less comfortable or protected lanes in some places. Let's get that bike infrastructure out there now and in the ground. Bus service, kind of a clear trend towards what we're calling that improving direction here on the right hand. But really, the options here were to really improve bus service throughout the city to mirror that in terms of reliability and on-time performance and destinations of RTD's kind of light rail.
Evan?
Again,
just looking at the clock, let's bring up our first question, and maybe that the team can help us kind of interpret those results live. Appreciate it. Awesome. Yeah, Laura, maybe just let's pose these. Just want to make sure we have enough time to learn from the group.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sam. So again, we don't have much time, but we do want to hear from you all. So we'll have a couple minutes for each question. So our first question here is, are initial public results consistent with your priorities and your vision for Denver? So in the slide Evan just showed, you could see whether folks were trending towards improving the system or expanding the system. Is what you saw similar to your view, or is your view different from what we're seeing so far?
Yeah, maybe back up, Evan, and they can kind of look at those results. And we probably just have time for a couple people to jump in, but feel free to put your note in the chat too, and we'll intake that. So any surprises here?
We did get a question about if equity is coming into decisions when reviewing the survey, and I believe we are asking which neighborhood folks are in, but I don't know that we're collecting more information than that. And Sam and Evan, you can jump in if that's not the
Yes.
case.
So yes, thank you, Laura. So we're collecting neighborhood information. In addition, we're asking people to provide demographic information. So if that information is provided, we do have the ability to separate results by how people identify, and we're going to see if there's any differences there. Our tactic all along has been to elevate the voices of diverse individuals who are participating in this project, and we want to look at those separately from the results that we hear from all people to really ensure that their priorities are linked directly to our recommendations.
Great, thanks, Sam. And we got one other comment in the chat, and then we'll move on to the next question. But this was, they're surprised that people didn't call for more protected bike lanes everywhere, or was that an option? And, it doesn't get into specifics with respect to protected versus not protected, but the options were, you select from being more comfortable on a bike in fewer places to less comfortable, but in more places. So there's some leeway within that as to whether they're protected bike lanes or not. But yeah, folks were choosing more on expanding that system than more comfortable, but in fewer places. And then just another quick note that she thinks whether or not one has choices about driving will influence decisions. 30% want more local connections, which says they might not be 100% reliant on public transit, which is a good point. Okay, if there's nothing else here, let's move on to the next question. Evan, if you want to pop back to that question slide. So now we'd love to hear from you what strategies we could consider to make the improvements. So we'll pop back over so that you folks can see what people responded. But, Evan showed before that 75% of our funds are basically split half and half between operation and maintenance. So maintenance would be, improving our system potentially, and that 25% is expanding our system currently. So what kind of strategies could we use to advance, what folks are selecting as their priorities here?
So I would note this, Jonathan. I would note from my angle, I've tried to take this survey, but I must admit I got a little bit confused after the questions about these improvement priorities. When we got to a question about a sort of hypothetical budgeting situation, I think it was something like $100 presented, and you could choose $10, $20, or $60 to no to yes, this to any of these spending priorities. I found myself, and I mean, I'm here. I feel like I'm generally pretty well informed on the matters here. I found myself too confused by this prompt to continue the survey. So I thought I should at least deliver that feedback here. When we talk about operating the system, maintaining the system, improving or expanding the system, even the examples here where we say improving Denver's system, we say, well, hey, we're going to upgrade the existing infrastructure so that it works better for everyone. We also note under expanding that that's building new infrastructure like new bikeways or sidewalks or bus routes. But in many cases, it feels like, given that we've covered most of the land already in development that is in Denver, this is one and the same. Like if I think about the place outside my home, West Colfax, it wouldn't exactly be, it wouldn't be expanding Denver's road network in order to improve the system there. If we wanted to say, hey, I'd like to bike more safely, or as our public commenter Paul said, want to improve 18th with restriping or rebuild of the existing road network. I'm not sure whether what Paul's proposing or what I would propose to, have maybe a painted bus lane on West Colfax I'm not sure whether that falls into improving here, because I would think of that as improving an existing thoroughfare to make it work better for all users based on the priorities we saw on that last screen. Or if it would be expanding. Here the description here seems to suggest that that would be expanding, even though I don't really think of that as expanding. I would have thought like maybe a new pedestrian crossing over 6th Avenue, which is really hard to cross right now over on the west side, would count as expanding. We're building like a net new bridge, something along those lines.
Yes.
Yeah, so when it comes to these priorities, I just wanted to comment, like, I'm not really sure how to answer your question about strategies because I'm not even sure how to answer this question correctly.
Fair, really fair point. We have heard that feedback as we started to scale these questions, and we, especially with our grassroots team, we've been doing a lot on education. So wanted to acknowledge that. Yes, we have heard that. Improving that, you know, to think about it in an analogy, improving is kind of like making an upgrade to your house to something that already exists. So you're going to replace your windows with something that's more energy efficient, or you replace your furnace. So you take something that you have and you make it work better. To use that analogy on streets, what that correlates to is we have the 15L on Colfax. We're going to upgrade that facility with bus rapid transit. So we take something that we have an existing bus route and we make it better. Expanding is different in that it is creating something in a place that it didn't exist before. So an example of that would be using that house analogy. Imagine if you had an addition put onto that house. Linking that back to transportation, what that means is we're putting a bike lane on a street where one did not exist. So we're expanding that system. And using the bus routes, we're putting a new bus route on a street that didn't have one. So I apologize that didn't come through. That feedback is helpful. You know, explaining technical transportation topics is unfortunately hard, and we do our best to make them approachable to general public. So we have more work to do.
Yep. And just one thing to add on to that, it's actually impossible to choose 60 here. To add up, well, sorry, like if I try like clicking through these selections. Oh wait, no, sorry, nope, never mind. I forgot I didn't move something down to 10, but nope, yep, that works. Ignore my comment, Laura.
The math we iterated on to make sure that was successful. But Jonathan, I hear you.
Yeah.
What we're looking for from your committee is feedback that we have constrained resources, and something we frequently hear is, can we have this and that plus a couple of those too? And fundamentally, we don't have enough resources to do everything. And through Denver Moves Everyone, we're trying to use data to demonstrate what investments get us the most progress towards our goals. We use this term return on investment. With limited dollars, $1 in bucket A might actually have a greater than return than $1 in bucket B. And so what we're hearing from the public is that the kind of the slices of the pie, if we look at our results, is different than our current allocation of those buckets today. And we do recognize folks are gonna, you know, maybe have a couple issues working with the tool, but we have oriented the tool so that if people do tell us their number one priority, that's the most helpful information, because when we look at thousands of results across the cities, those priorities tend to bubble up to the top. So, you know, in the last couple minutes here, the results of this tool are different than kind of the allocation today. And it's not to say it's a one-to-one relationship, right? There's a lot of technical analysis that goes into why we invest so much in maintenance and operations and have available resources for system expansion. But that said, you know, we hear you, the tool could use some improvements, and we'll do our best to get there. But maybe in the last minute here, Laura, the prompts for this specific question about how we kind of allocate those resources, would love to hear any feedback from the group about things you've been thinking about, because I know that you all advocate and really work with community to push for different outcomes. And we're trying to manage lots of different input sources to develop a strategy that demonstrates and reflects that broader vision. So I'll leave it at there, but Jonathan, I'll ask you too. You said 5:20, so we're pretty much at time. If we got a couple minutes for some dialogue on this question, we're all ears for it, but we do want to pass the mic back to you if we do not have any more time.
No, yeah, appreciate that. Brian, I think you had your hand up first there. Why don't you had a question or comment, and then Jake, perhaps we can conclude after that.
Yeah, I'm curious on some of the strategies for really just gaining public excitement or understanding what's even possible. And I think of some of the neighborhood bikeway build out. So I think of the first one on 35th that was, I think, prioritize the build out, the expansion of the system prior to the quality of the system. And I understand that to be kind of our strategy in a lot of the city is to kind of expand the system first. But it seems to me like just having one built out, example of that, what that infrastructure can do can really help the public understand what it is they're even voting for. And for me, like it's a subpar system now, and if we're building a lot of those in a subpar way, it kind of shows the public that, what are they really voting for? A neighborhood bikeway that I think is actually a bit more dangerous in the case of 35th.
Yeah, so we need like a marquee example of that infrastructure to gain excitement about what more people could have in more places. Yeah, really good point. Thank you.
All right.
Alicia or
Jonathan
Jake?
said me next. So I have a quick comment and then kind of a bigger thought. I think that I've done a lot of the Denver Move surveys and stuff. I'm going to be honest, I did have some of the same issues Jonathan did. And I think also just my feedback would be this one was a little hard to understand the purpose of. So I'm very excited about the direction of where we're going with a lot of Denver Move materials, and the community engagement has been really, really strong. But this was a survey where I was filling it out and wasn't exactly clear on how it would use it or influence the process. So just if possible, I'd love more of an intro on that on future ones. And then I think to my bigger point, maybe it builds on Brian's a little bit, is I think of Denver Moves as where we want to go. And I felt emotionally challenged by this survey because it felt like it was bringing us into what we're currently doing, but slightly different. And I guess I was hoping that a lot of the Denver Moves work would be about imagining Denver in the best form that it could be. And I think that, I would love to see, some output of the Denver Moves process to be, hey, this is the gold standard Denver. This is who we could be. This is the vision we could, I guess to steal from Mayor Pena, this is the Imagine a Great City option, right? And I think that that's something, I would like to see an option where maybe we don't spend 60 on each of those buckets, but maybe we could spend 40 on each and have a pretty good city and show a vision for the voters and the elected officials what this city could be if we resourced it appropriately. I think we've seen a lot in Denver that the voters are willing to throw tax money into bold visions that support actually bringing our infrastructure up to grade. And I guess I just challenge that I'd love for there to be Denver Moves work that doesn't kind of steal that hope away a little bit. I'm not saying this did, but it made me a little nervous that maybe we had put together a plan and a vision, and then we were kind of backtracking on it a little bit.
Totally. Yeah, great feedback, and we appreciate it. I think that what I heard is, really making sure this plan is visionary. And I think that there's storytelling that goes along with that. So as we look towards the fall, team, let's all take that feedback into account. And I think what's really exciting about Denver Moves Everyone, some plans are purely visionary. They don't develop that game plan of how do we build this in a stepwise fashion in the next 6 years, in the next 15, in the next 30. So Denver Moves Everyone is a little bit different in that we are being really short-term focused while we craft that long-term vision. So perhaps that got lost in translation a little bit, but know that the call to action is how do we create that amazing place that provides access and opportunity for everyone. And so know that we're aligned in that long-term goal, but it sounds like more work is needed to be done to make sure that that is clear to the general public. So we'll keep working on that.
Well, I recognize we're over time. Alicia, I know you haven't had a chance to speak tonight, so I want to make sure you have a chance to leave your commentary, ask your question before we move topics.
Sure, and I won't be long because I may be a little bit off, but I mean, I'm looking at all of this, and I think one of the things that I think about when I'm working with the communities that I do, I'm particularly thinking about Northeast Denver, is exposure, right? And so some of these terms and looking at the survey, et cetera, I don't think that people don't know what they don't know and what the opportunities are. So helping them to understand that vision would be very helpful. And I think in doing that and partnering potentially with trusted organizations to even get them to get involved in some of this is important, because I think they will tell you stories or will share things about how they're unable to do things that relate to the work that's going on here, but they don't know that there's a whole vision and plan around it or how to engage in that. And so and I don't know if we're moving faster than what that could occur, but my concern is that we're going to leave out a whole group of folks because they just aren't exposed or don't understand what this could mean to their areas. And I hope that I said that properly, but that it has
Yeah,
been
no,
my thought.
that totally makes sense. And we covered it very quickly that we have a new tactic called community-based outreach partners, where we're working directly with individuals who have strong relationships with community-based organizations or have a strong network in different areas of town that we haven't heard as much through the Denver Moves Everyone process and frankly past planning processes, to help us do a better job of sharing this information and translating the words that we're using into really accessible terms that make sense for that community. So for instance, like the Montbello Connector just launched, that's an example of a local shuttle that we're asking about in the tool, that there's a real world example that people can relate to. And so we can do more work in that space, I agree. But I did want to emphasize that that's a new tactic that honestly, based on feedback we heard from the advisory committee of how can we do a better job of equitable outreach, that we have invested in that new strategy through this phase of engagement. And we are already starting to see the success of that, but also good coaching. How, got to use simpler language. We came up with that house analogy to equip our partners with ways to explain what we're looking for in terms that make sense to those communities. So it's a work in progress, but I hope we're moving in the right direction. If you have any ideas furthermore there, love to connect with you offline if that'd be of interest to you too.
Yeah, I think Alicia, if there are, community-based organizations, we can cross-check with who we're already working with. And it would be great check, kind of as we move through this process, if there's other individuals. That is our goal. Equity is, what we start with. And so we really want to ensure that those voices that we don't usually hear from, right, that we're meeting people where they are and working to get that feedback. So would love that, and really leaning on this committee too, to carry that flag for us and ensure that everyone is engaged. That's our goal, is to have every Denverite, if we tell them on the street, what is Denver Moves Everyone, that they at least heard about it and hopefully have engaged. So would really appreciate maybe working with you offline to make sure we're not missing organizations.
I'm more than happy to do so, and we'll leave my information for you all in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. We appreciate it.
Okay, with that, thanks again for the Denver Moves team for moving so hurriedly through that. I know you were promised more time than we had today, but we have had a few surprise items come up on the agenda this round. So with that, I think we'll move over to some of these committee updates and letter discussion, unless anyone has any final comments or questions about DME.
Well, thanks for your time. Really appreciate the opportunity that you provided tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
So I do see that Jose has joined us once more. That being the case, I believe it was the policy subcommittee that brought the proposal of reviewing and approving co-signature of the previously MBAC approved letter about I-25 expansion to the board here today. Just to be sure I understand the topic presented for policy correctly, could someone from policy confirm that we are seeking a vote simply not on edits to the letter, but simply whether we want to be a co-signatory on this letter that MBAC has already approved?
That's correct. And to give a little intro, I don't love that. Ideally, we as a group could look at the letter, talk about individual components, and really work together to make a document that's reflective of this team. That being said, we are working in a collaborative process, and it's a little bit more challenging. So we have 3 committees, we have 2 committees plus our board that need to vote on this letter. And unfortunately, we don't have a bicameral process like the state capitol or Capitol Hill to reconcile changes between documents. So with that being said, we do have text to vote on in its current form, and I do apologize. It is not my preference to say that this is the text we are voting on, but that is the case. I have no other way to say it. But that being said, we did review it as a policy committee. We also, Michelle also shared out some of the CDOT planning documents. I think when we look at a lot of the options for this, there are a ton of options that I think the 3 committees are more open to than some others. There are some that involve relatively large changes to the Baker and Lincoln Park neighborhoods, including wholly removing the highway to a different part of the neighborhood. So I think what we're hoping is that we have some alignment around kind of a general concept of, there may be work to do to bring the corridor up to standard that is different work than widening, than using eminent domain to take land. Really, this corridor has capacity, and there are opportunities to make it safer. It doesn't necessarily need to be widened just because that's historically what we've done with highways. It's there's some additional color than the policy committee, but we've seen a lot of evidence, particularly in the Denver area, that widening highways can actually, in fact, make congestion worse than really assist it. But that's my little spiel. I could probably go on about this kind of topic for another 2 hours, but I'll leave it there. I don't know if, Jose, you want to add anything just from the NBAC perspective?
I mean, I already gave a little spiel. I will add, we don't see this as the end of this project. It is, a huge multi-modal project that will affect the future of the city. So whether that is, I know we have some plans to, work on some additional letters, especially related to like the city's budgeting on this moving forward. Whether that is, all of the different boards moving forward separately and writing their own letters, or whether this leads to further collaboration in the future. I guess we are open to either option. But yeah, at this time, we, like I said, we just wanted a short, sweet letter to the point that we could get out there.
Okay, something I might suggest just for, I guess, operation of a voting meeting, I'd like to provide a little background on voting on this board for those who might not recall from the bylaws we have. If we'd like to vote within a meeting for an approval or denial of something along these lines, and we want to accomplish that in just one meeting, we do need to endeavor to accomplish or achieve consensus -1. So of the 13 voting members present today, 12 at least would have to approve moving forward with this. If we cannot receive consensus -1, we would need to, someone would need to propose that we move to a voting process, but we cannot complete the voting process within this meeting. It must be given at least 48 hours notice to a later meeting. If there is some sort of either natural disaster or something along those lines, or just a time consideration, that means we cannot wait until our following meeting, which would be the case with this letter that needs to go out sooner than that. We are allowed to collect those votes electronically, so long as we do give 48 hours notice. So I think what I might suggest for this meeting today is I'll ask the group first if there are any additional questions for Jake, Jose, others within the group about the letter, its content, what it seeks to accomplish, any concerns about it, just a little room for discussion here. Then I might call a movement for a vote, and we can see if we can achieve that consensus without moving to an alternative process. With that, Manny, I see you've raised your hand. Got the floor.
I apologize. I accidentally raised the hand. No comments. Thanks.
Oh, all right. Anyone else? Comments, questions?
This is Jamie. I'm the chair of the policy committee, and I agree with Jake and Jose. This is very, lacking detail, but I think it's sending a message that we want to reprioritize the monies used for transportation. So I would encourage everybody to vote yes.
Brian, I see your hands up.
Oh yeah, Jose, I want to thank you for coming. If you weren't aware, I'm a former MBAC chair. I am in contact with Amy quite a bit. I was contacting her on this. I think maybe the communication ball got dropped a little bit somewhere down the line, but I would also recommend we move forward with this with the committee, because I think this is an important vote.
All right, anyone else in the group? No, I think one question I received here is, but I guess to paraphrase, what is the rush or reason for lack of edits? If we do want to suggest small changes, do we have the opportunity, such as, I think as Alan suggested here, spelling out MBAC and MPAC, small edits like that? I know MBAC has already approved, and I think that's why we were trying to avoid any edits to the letter. But I'm wondering if there is some sort of, I don't know, minor edits request process we could follow through MBAC, or if that would open a can of worms that we don't want to touch.
So I will say, if there are just minor edits like that aren't really substantive to the letter, we definitely have a process in place that we can deal with it. We can just do an email vote on our board. And I did see Alan's suggestion, and I do think it is a good one. So, small edits like that, we are happy to take from our perspective. Really the timing, and it was kind of unfortunate. We only learned about this probably 2.5, 3 weeks ago. It just really has to do with some of the decision making happening later this month. So ideally, we wanted to get this letter out there, even if it was light on details, to set our position out there for when those decisions are made. I will admit, I'm not a CDOT decision-making expert, so I'm not totally sure on the exact mechanics there, but that's my general understanding of the rush.
Right, there's a limited commented period, it sounds like, and we want to achieve that. Okay. With that being the case, Jose, it sounds like you're open to us requesting minor edits here. I think that what that means for this board is we would need to first have a movement for a request for small amendments, followed by a request for approval of the letter with those edits, if approved by our board, contained within. So I don't see any other hands. I'll go ahead and make that movement. Specifically, the board here would be moving to spell out the terms MBAC, MPAC, and DOTI Advisory Board. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Okay. We'll first ask for ayes in favor of.
Aye.
Ayes.
Aye.
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 Okay, pausing for a moment. Do I have any nays?
Aye.
I think we have a nay from Manny. Just to be sure I'm not off, were there any other nays besides Manny?
I was A.
Oh, you were A. Oh, sorry.
Nay.
All right. I think the audio cut you off. All right. All right. Okay. All right. So then that's unanimous that we moved that request to change. So secondarily, moving that we as a DOTI Advisory Board approve being a co-signatory on this document that will be delivered by MBAC. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded. We'll begin again then with the ayes. Who approves this?
Aye.
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 Aye from me as well. Do we have any
Aye.
nays? Opening for nays. No. All right. Co-signatory of this document is then approved. Given that is briefly, thank you, Jose, for your time rejoining. I know after hours here. In interest of time, I do want to quickly move to our next group. Policy, oh, actually, sorry, I should briefly ask. This was the project proposed to us from the policy subcommittee to discuss today. Are there any other updates from the policy group that you'd like to share with today's meeting before we move on to the finance and budget group?
If I could really quick just say thank you guys, and I look forward to working on other topics related to this in the future on behalf of MBAC.
Thanks, Jose.
This is Jamie, the chair of the policy committee. We had our first meeting on April 20th. We did elect officers. Lucia is going to be our secretary and Jake's going to be our vice chair. I am the main chair. We're vetting 3 subjects. One of them you just heard, the I-25 expansion project, and the other 2 issues is the right-of-way, and the third one is possible use of e-bikes in other communities besides downtown Denver. So that's our short version. So if anybody has any questions.
I actually myself do have a brief question there.
Yes.
When you mentioned that you are considering right of way, I missed last meeting, so perhaps this was discussed then. Sorry if that is the case. But we have had many public commenters asking about fencing, right of way management, et cetera. I know we've heard from Nick Williams and others that we do have a very clear issue with staffing and operations. We've also had presenters note that they're experiencing issues with 311 closing tickets that, as you know, no violation, even though a violation per the department's policy has occurred. I could see this straddling the line between, is this a policy question? I mean, pretty clearly, it seems like the policy of Denver matches our vision for what it would be with the right-of-way enforcement. The difficulty is in the enforcement, and so I thought that maybe this is more of an operations thing. When you speak of right-of-way, is policy looking at a policy question for right-of-way and enforcement, or is that actually being handled by our operations subcommittee right now?
It's a great question. It straddles both. When we talk about what materials can be used in the right-of-way, that might be a policy issue versus staffing, making sure there's enough inspectors out there would probably be operations. What we're trying to do is whittle it down to 2 or 3 things that we think DOTI can accomplish, and hopefully we're going to have something to you by our next meeting.
Okay, totally fair. Just wanted to clarify how you were looking at the question. Any other questions for the policy group?
One note on that, Jonathan, if we are trying to get a sense of urgency, I guess, behind responding to the right-of-way questions, I think in our bylaws, we can create a temporary project group to look at that. That might be something that we should look at.
I am wondering then, is anyone from the operations group here and can speak to, are you looking at that sort of 311 processing and the operational and staffing questions on this subject now? If not, I think it'd be reasonable to propose that we either put that to our operations group, or as Brian has suggested, perhaps we do form a specific group that's tackling this issue, given it straddles policy and operations. My memory is failing me for who is a member of operations. That's why I sort of asked if anyone's here.
I think because, this is Jamie again, because we're just starting our committees, I would prefer that the policy be able to whittle down the issues it can apply, and then ask the operations to take those other issues. And we'll probably have, like I said, that in 30 days.
That's fair. That being the case, I was going to ask this of operations, but one of our commenters earlier today, Anna, separately, one of our questions, Paul, commenters earlier, Paul asked about sort of paving and repaving strategy and policy around like how that can change, when it can change, what happens with repaving. This is another issue that I felt sort of straddles the line of policy and operations. Like, what is our policy around revising the striping when we do implement repaving of streets? But it could also be operations, because it could be a question of, are these sort of like automatically inherently upgraded under our complete street guidelines as we move? Do you, as a member of the policy group, have an opinion on whether you'd like us to turf this question to you or have it designated out to operations?
I think the first question would be, has DOTI personnel heard the last two testimonies, and are they considering any of those suggestions? You know, I would hate to start something and find out that DOTI was already considering something. So if we can get official feedback from DOTI saying, no, we haven't considered this, and then I would think that's an operations myself.
Okay.
And other members of my group can speak up if they'd like to, so please.
A question then to the DOTI staff on the phone. Does anyone have that answer in front of us, or should we assign that out to one of our groups?
I don't have that in front of me or right now. You know, we could, if I can get someone just to type up what the specific from this, I can shop it around and make sure this is not something before you guys go down the road. Because I think that's a good point. So I'm happy to do that if y'all want to send that my way.
Thank you,
Nick. Nick, I can get that over to you based on the notes from earlier tonight.
Thank you, Nick. I think that saves us time.
Yep. All right. With that, we'll move over to finance and budget. Could I ask someone from budget and finance, I'm now sharing this, to sort of intro the topic at hand for this letter to Director Adam Phipps and CFO Earl Jackson.
Yeah, this is Alan. I am one of the three members of the Budget and Finance Committee, along with Kurt Morrison and Chris Pacheco. And I don't think Chris or Kurt are with us, so I'll hop in here. But if you guys are here and I'm just not seeing it, feel welcome to dive in as well. But the charge that we had from Mr. Jackson, the DOTI CFO, last month was to come up with a letter to send to them that they can think about as they start to really think about our budget for next year. And he was kind enough to give us a very broad scope as to what to go for on this letter. We reached out to Michelle to get some clarity on a deadline for that, and they wanted to have it by May 20th. So again, similar to the letter that was brought to us here, we'd love for this to be more collaborative, but in essence of time of meeting that deadline, we wanted to go on something that we think that would have consensus from the group. If you look at this letter, and by the way, we sent this letter out to everyone over email. We had several folks asking for comments or had some comments and questions. Jamie mentioned we'd love to get some more specifics, which I think is a great idea for the future. But in essence of this deadline, we wanted to keep it broad brushstrokes. So we're talking here about the letter that this group unanimously, we based this on the foundation of the letter that Antonio wrote a few months ago that was unanimously approved by this group. And the gist of it is really asking for more dollars for safety and sustainability and investments to be disproportionately made in investments that are on the Denver Equity Index as well. You guys can read, hopefully you've all had a time to read through it so far, but the gist of it is we really want to focus on Vision Zero. We want to focus on equity. We want to focus on sustainable transportation as the broad brushstrokes. And given that we had said that in the previous letter, we thought that we could get consensus from this group to move forward on a letter for this. And next year, knowing that this is coming, to Jamie's point, we can be much more specific and give some very specific recommendations, hopefully having a few more months to plan and prepare it, but we at least wanted to get this out to give that direction as that budget process takes place.
Certainly. So if I suggest we follow a similar process to our last round here, open to the group for questions, commentary on support or a lack of support for this document before we move to approve by vote. Any questions, comments from the group here? Lucia, I see your hand is up, but but it's been up for a little bit, so I'm not sure if that's for this topic. Just went down. So it looks like putting that down. Joe, your hand is up.
Yeah, I mean, I totally believe in the equity aspect of it, but I also think that, you know, if there's an area that's just, you know, if it's 18th and whatever, City Park West, doesn't really matter what the equity is of that. If people are, you know, really in trouble, they're really unsafe, that has to also come to the forefront. So just don't want to stress that part of it, but really, and I'm assuming that most of those areas are in the underserved areas that are the least safe, but I want to make sure we really focus on that too. So I wouldn't change the letter, but I just hope that that's kind of how the rest of the committee feels.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right, Joe. The places that are being impacted with this traffic violence and candidly the air pollution as well are places on the equity index, places on, and we are also citing the high injury network, that 5% of streets accounting for 50% of the fatalities, right? So we're saying like, hey, let's invest in the equity areas, but also focusing on the high injury network. So I think by the nature, unfortunately, the high injury network mostly being in the equity areas, it's going to also be taken care of.
Thanks, understood.
Jake.
I just wanted to throw my vocal support in. I think we have reached kind of crisis level when it comes to traffic violence in the city, and it is scary the direction we're moving in as we start to see more and more data from the past couple of years. So I appreciate that the Budget and Finance Committee took extra care to focus on those areas in their letter. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Jake.
Seeing no other hands, I did want to comment just in case anyone missed the email. Tanger Wright, one of our board members, did send support for the letter as well before this meeting. She did not designate a proxy person to send a vote by, so that vote that will be counted as a vote, but did want it to be aware amongst the group that she was supportive and her comments were included. She left commentary in the document which were addressed by Alan and the rest of the team here. With that, no other comments, questions. I'll move to vote for approval of sending this letter to Executive Director Adam Phipps and CFO Earl Jackson. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All right. Beginning again with the ayes.
Aye.
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 Okay. Do we have any nays? Sounds like no, and I've counted, we still do maintain quorum in the meeting here, although we've had a departure. That being the case, sending this letter as written has been approved. We should, right after this meeting, save off the exact text of this letter as it is, so that no further edits can be made, given that this was the text that was approved, and we can get that delivered. Hoping that the group, the finance and budget group that wrote this, could you handle delivery of this to the appropriate parties?
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Okay, great. So we are somewhat limited on time. Did want to ask to conclude our, I did this last time as well. Finance Budget Group, did you have any other topics for us today? Or was it just this letter? Sounds like no. That being the case, wanted to give a brief opportunity for our 3 remaining subcommittees to provide an update, if any exist. That would be community engagement, operations, and projects. Starting with our community engagement group, is there anything you'd like to share with the broader board?
Hi, this is Alicia. Our community engagement group has not been able to meet yet. Unfortunately, I had an unplanned surgery, but I will try to get everybody together in the next few weeks.
Okay, I hope everything went well.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, great news.
Thank you.
Okay, then, operations. I didn't hear anyone speak up from operations earlier, so I think we might just not have them on the line. But if anyone, I'll give a moment here. If anyone from operations is here to provide an update. Just pausing. Sounds like no. Okay, and then to round us out, the projects group, as of now with Antonio's departure, that is just Christopher Johnson and myself. We'll note that we met briefly to set some priorities for our subcommittee. Those are seen as twofold. One will be to investigate deeper details about particular projects as our subcommittee sees fit, but of course taking advisement from the broader board and public comment as they come through to help establish our priorities, where we might want to take a deeper dive into existing, past, or future projects and share those details with the broader board. Beyond that, we're also hoping to take some time to develop, and Christopher, please correct me if I sort of misunderstand here, if I misspeak some of what we discussed. But we were hoping to develop, in conjunction with this board and with oversight from this board, some level of rubric and scoring assessments of current and future moving projects. As we see more projects come through in capital and budget planning cycles, we see that various departments and also regional agencies provide scores for their project preferences based on their own priorities and rubrics. We thought it would be good for us as a board to develop our own scoring system that we can share as these projects come down the pipeline, using past projects as examples. We don't have a direct timeline for when we'd like to get this done, just have had a first conversation about that intent. That being the case, any questions or commentary from the other members of the board about this?
Jonathan, your recollection of this is excellent. You must have been taking notes. So
yeah,
it's very good. And I would just add that we're looking for kind of a litmus test or a very straightforward DOTI Citizen Advisory Board scoring mechanism. I don't recommend that we develop anything that is, cumbersome, but just a litmus test so that we can say, we did look at this, and these are the metrics that we look at, and boy, it passed with flying colors, right? Just for a frame of reference.
Yep, match my relation as well. Thanks, Chris. Just pausing for a moment to see if there are any other questions. If not, we can move to our final orders of business here. Okay, so that being the case, to move back to a topic that Michelle brought up earlier in our meeting, there are a number of our board members. If you recall, what was we established as our bylaws? As we established our bylaws, we staggered the terms of our initial board members, some ending in 2022, some 2023, some 2024. So we've now reached the end of the first term of some of our board members, about a third of them, effectively, that were staggered to be just that first year. Michelle has asked which board members might like to continue or would not like to continue with their line of service here. Of course, choosing to continue is not really just a choice of our own. It actually does require approval from our city councilors or the mayor themselves, depending on the approving or appointing party here. But at least that interest has been gathered. Michelle, I know you sent me this in the chat, but I'm hoping you can sort of recall for us how folks have responded and what it is we need to ask the group today.
Well, probably the best thing to do is talk about the 2022 terms and who's up for reappointment, or if you've decided this is it and you're ready to move on from the advisory board. So out of the 2022 term endings, you have Brian and Jonathan are both mayoral appointees. And from what I've gathered, both Brian and Jonathan have expressed interest or reapplied to the next term. Yes. And then the others on the city council side were Alan, Chris Johnson, Manny, Michael. I think that's all of them, and Joe. So out of all of those, the only ones I've heard that, and again, please let me know if this information is incorrect. The only ones I've heard that might not continue with us are Manny and Michael. Manny, since we have you on here, is this something that would you like to continue, or is this the end for you?
Yes, unfortunately, my job is requiring me to travel out of the country quite a bit, so I might be missing quite a few of these meetings. So it's been an honor to serve on this board. I appreciate everyone's input and education. I mean, it's been a really an eye-opener, and I've learned a lot from everybody on this board. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Manny. Thank you for, it's a long year for all of us. So thank you for starting this. Starting a board is not an easy thing. So I know Joe has reapplied, right? And then Chris Johnson, yes. I think you have, but I know you're on the line too.
I certainly have. And I also responded to follow-up questions from the proctor.
Perfect. So at this point, Jonathan, going back to that, the only two are Manny and Michael have decided not to extend to the next term. And as we talked about earlier, Antonio, even though his term isn't up until 2023, has decided that he needs to leave the board. Mm-hmm. So that's where we are.
And to sort of draw everyone else into the process here, a couple of those folks are council appointees. The council process takes some time to approve new appointees. So the councilors have been notified, do need to seek new appointees, but it'll be at best weeks possibly a month or two before we see new members there. What I have not done is reviewed our bylaws to understand if or how that affects quorum. I think unfortunately our quorum might still be associated to the full roster, although we won't have a full roster for counts, which makes things a little tricky. But I haven't clarified that yet, so do need to double check. Brian.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'm pretty sure it's percentage based.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. Awesome. So we are in our last minute here. I was hoping we had a little more time for this. Might need to discuss offline some of our agenda topics for the next meeting. Did want to note though that we do need to elect a new co-chair. We do still have Ray as co-chair and me as secretary. With Antonio gone, we do need a new co-chair. I would propose that we hold that election in the next meeting just to keep things moving. That being the case, I will send out a request for nominees over email, Google form again in between meetings, so that we can look for nominations and get this combined together so we could hold a quick vote next meeting. Any questions, concerns about that election? And I know we're at our last, we've just hit time here in this last couple minutes. Any proposals just for the group to get ahead of this for topics for next meeting, so that we can focus some of the debate over email in between? Sounds like no on either side. I will collect from Ray and some of our prior meeting notes, other topics we had ahead of us in any case. I know we had a few listed. We'll share that with this group and then talk to, I guess, Michelle and others about topics that are emerging for the department to make sure we hold adequate time. Thanks everyone for joining tonight, and I will talk to you next month.
Jonathan, thank you for running such an efficient meeting while being thrown into the fire 5 minutes into it. I appreciate it. Michelle, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
month, guys. Be safe.
Thank you all.
Bye.